Hi there! Are you tired of being called a racist, a misogynist, a white supremacist, a Nazi, a homophobe, and a transphobe?
Yes, but probably not for the reason you think. I like it when words mean things. When you take a word that's supposed to mean something specific and impactful, like racist, and apply it so broadly as to have anyone fall under it, it loses its specificity, and by extension its impact. If everyone's a racist, who cares about being called a racist? The word stops being a useful description. For me personally, you can call me a racist all you like, but that's not going to change my opinion of myself unless you can also demonstrate my racism to me. Which shouldn't be that difficult because I make no bones about how much I hate niggers.
Then you need to learn how to be a politically correct bigot.
It's actually quite astounding how accurately the phrase politically correct bigot describes you. Aside from your bigotry towards white cis-het males, by applying words like racist and transphobe as broadly as you do, you are, in essence, normalizing racism and transphobia. If not sexually preferring trans people, for example, is transphobic, that would mean a significant portion of the population, if not most of the population, is transphobic. And if most of the population is transphobic, that would mean transphobia is normal. Congratulations, Riley, you're normalizing hatred towards minority groups. I will send you your Gamergate hat as soon as possible.
You see, the days of being able to shout racist and sexist slurs from the rooftops are over. People are too politically correct now. It's like for some reason people don't like blatant hatred being spewed everywhere. I don't get it.
Really? Riley doesn't get it. And here I was thinking he had his finger on the social pulse of the modern age.
But anyway, because of this new climate of tolerance and acceptance, you have to be more careful with your words if you happen to be a skeptical, rational, free-thinking, patriotic American like me.
I am all of those things. Show me how to be careful, Riley.
Don't worry though, I've got your back. Here's how you can learn to be a politically correct bigot. Number 1, don't call black people the N-word, just call them thugs. We all know that white people should be allowed to say the N-word, but in today's political climate, you just can't.
But I really like the N-word. Can we compromise and come up with a combination of nigger and thug? Like, thigger or nug. I do like nugs.
Too many triggered snowflakes out there.
Oh hey, trigger kind of works as that combination. Bunch of filthy triggers mooching off the government, go back to Africa.
So instead, just call them thugs. It's just as racist on the inside, but sounds less racist on the outside.
Alright, I'm gonna take this video off track for a few seconds while I bitch about your editing. Because you overlap the end of your last sentence with the beginning of your next sentence, it becomes really hard for me to splice in my own commentary. And I almost want to think you're doing this as a self-defense mechanism, as a way to dissuade people from responding to your videos. Because this is getting really fucking annoying. But I take my internet bullying seriously, so I'm not going to stop just because you've inconvenienced me.
Number 2, instead of saying that you hate people of color, just say that you support national security. The trick here is that nobody can disagree with wanting national security, so anyone who criticizes you will look like an asshole. Then you can build a huge wall on the southern border and ban people from the Middle East and say it's for national security, even though those things won't actually make us any safer. The important part is, they look like they'll make us safer, and they'll keep people of color out. It's a win-win.
Do you consider yellow a color? Because I find it weird that all of our travel restrictions seem to be targeted at areas of high terrorist rates, if our goal is to merely keep out minorities. Where are all the East Asian travel bans? Even if you don't think these restrictions will actually make us safer, that's clearly the goal. Or maybe you don't think Asians count as people of color. They're very successful here in America, so maybe you've just lumped them in with white. Huh. The social justice position is to conflate whiteness with success. Food for thought.
Number 3, if you want to lead a harassment campaign against someone, make sure that you display a disclaimer saying that you don't condone harassment. You see, an old-fashioned harassment campaign is seen as offensive nowadays. Something about bullying marginalized people or some shit like that. So instead of telling people what you're doing, just do all of the same things, but don't say that you're doing it. Essentially, you want to make it easy for your hundreds of thousands of followers to go harass someone by giving them all the information they need, but not actually directly telling them to do it.
So drawing attention to something is all that's required in order to constitute a harassment campaign. Someone tell the SPLC to add Google to the very top of their hate group listings. Every time one of Riley's videos shows up on YouTube's recommended page, that's Google sending waves of harassment at him.
If you make it easy enough for them, they'll do it whether you tell them to or not. And this way, you can avoid any responsibility. It's like putting a really tasty treat in front of a hungry dog and then telling the dog that it shouldn't eat the treat. It's still gonna do it, but then it's not your fault because you told it not to.
I thought one of the things social justice advocates were most upset about was dehumanization. Funny how that complaint only seems to go one way.
Number 4, don't call people feminazis, just call them feminist extremists. Back in the day, feminazi was a perfectly good insult. You could dismiss the arguments of any annoying feminist with just one word. But now, thanks to PC culture, we have to use 2 words. Feminist extremists.
Feminazi is still a perfectly acceptable term. Oh, I see what you're doing, Riley. You're trying to frame it as though feminazi has fallen out of style, but in reality you just want people to think that, so they'll stop using it. Nice try. This isn't my first game of 7-dimensional underwater space chess. You'll have to do better than that. King me.
Still, it's a good way to ignore the concerns of anyone who criticizes you, so I highly recommend using it.
Maybe a lesser shitlord would take the low road, but not me. I'll take the low and high roads at the same time. I'll call you a feminazi and explain why you're wrong.
Number 5, instead of saying that you hate trans people, just say that you wouldn't date them. Thanks to all the liberal, leftist, communist transgenders out there, it's now not okay to hate someone just because they're trans. That's ridiculous. You know it, I know it, we both know it. So to get around this, just say you would never date a trans person. It's a good way of getting your message across without explicitly saying it.
I don't hate the gays, but I wouldn't date one. I don't hate men, but I wouldn't date one. I don't hate my family, but I wouldn't date them. So why is it that not wanting to date someone is the same as hating them? I don't hate trans people, I just don't want to date them. I don't want to date most of them.
Plus, if anyone criticizes you, you can just call them a rapist and claim that they're trying to force you to have sex with a transgender person. Because remember, implicit bias is fake news. Number 6, don't call yourself a white supremacist. Just say that racism doesn't exist and that people of color are ruining our country.
I know of very few people who would actually argue that racism doesn't exist. I'd go so far as to say that I think racism is a bigger problem than you do, because I think it can also affect white people.
White supremacist has all sorts of negative connotations now. White nationalist is sometimes okay, but not always. The easiest way around this is just to say that you have white pride and to complain about reverse racism and white genocide.
I'm of the opinion that it's stupid to take pride in anything you didn't have control over. Being white's not an accomplishment on your part, so what are you proud about? I extend this sentiment to black pride as well, which I find equally ridiculous, yet that's the one people don't have a problem with. In regards to reverse racism, I find it interesting that you think discrimination based on race would be anything other than racist if it occurred to a white person. Racism and reverse racism refer to the same phenomena.
Talk about the evils of multiculturalism, laugh about the people of color who will die because of environmental racism, and yell at people when they don't speak English.
I yell at people for speaking a different language to me, even if they're white and speaking the same language as me.
Hi, this will be a short video, but I just wanted to let you all know that because of requests to do so, I have opened a public Discord server.
What did this jungle possum just say to me? Speak English.
But if anyone calls you a white supremacist, you deny it. The label might fit, but it's not politically correct.
Also, the label might not fit, but don't let that stop you from using it.
Number 7, instead of saying you support the alt-right, say that you're a centrist who just wants to hear both sides.
Frig off my centrism, doodaroo.
This one's easy. People love centrists, even though it's a logical fallacy to claim that the two extremes are bad and the center is good. It's called an argument to moderation. Look it up.
Listen here, fucko. I'm an atheist. On the internet. If you're going to come at me with talk about fallacies, you best come correct. The argument to moderation is an informal logical fallacy, and, as you would expect from a logical fallacy, only pertains to logical arguments. In regards to modern politics, when someone says the extremes are bad, that's not a logical statement, that's an observation. The center isn't preferable because it's the center, but because we can observe that the extremes on either ends are generally more crazy than the center. A posteriori trumps a priori.
But if you say you're a centrist, nobody can say that you're actually alt-right. And then all you have to do is ignore the left and constantly give a platform to the right. Make sure you challenge the left on all their ideas, but allow the alt-right to speak freely.
Why have you phrased that as if to imply that challenging the left is not allowing the left to speak freely? Damn it, Contra, all your talk about competing speech warped Riley's poor innocent mind.
It's genius, really. Say that you support free speech and hearing out both sides. People love that shit, and they won't even see how it works to empower the alt-right.
How am I supposed to defeat my political opposition if they're allowed to say words? Politics is so hard.
And that, my friends, is how you can be a politically correct bigot.
One of the few sentiments in this video I agree with. Listening to Riley is how to be a politically correct bigot. Anti-Sleeper, you magnificent stallion of a man. How is it that you release 2 videos in quick succession when normally you release content at the pace of a disfigured moose cub? I'll tell you how, astute and sexually attractive viewer. The 2 limiting factors in me releasing content are my laziness and finding something to respond to. This video and the last were piss easy to make because they didn't require any thought on my part. And I didn't even need to go out of my way to find them. They just kind of found me. If you'd like to see more content from me, I am open to suggestions on videos to respond to or topics to cover. Just get in contact with me somehow. There are plenty of ways. Also, I'm slowly compiling up a list of questions for a Q&A video that is coming soon TM. Ask me questions and I may respond to them. Don't worry, I won't bite unless we both consent.